Well, the title of John Warwick Montgomery's best-known book, Faith Founded on Fact, there's our alliteration for the day, well illustrates the methodological perspective of the evidentialist model of apologetics. Evidentialists believe that, quote, the facts speak for themselves. Of course they do, right?
Yeah,
all the time.
exactly.
There's no wavering. If the facts are out there, everyone looks at them and go, well, I can't argue with those. Right. That the best approach to defending the Christian faith is simply to present the factual evidence for the crucial claims of Christ. Maybe some more alliteration there. Well, in this chapter, then, we're going to consider some details that the evidentialist system of apologetics in order to come to terms with the distinctive ways it responds to the challenges facing the Christian apologist.
Right. And so, as you mentioned here, their methods for discovering the truth is basically the facts, right? Evidentialism and Christian apologetics, our authors tell us, seek to show the truth of Christianity by demonstrating its factuality. Whereas classical apologetics characteristically regards logic or reason as the primary criterion of truth, evidentialism, as you mentioned, characteristically assigns this priority to not logic or reason, but to fact. And so that's what they focus on.
Right. Well, and any good book on any part of this will start off with our definition. So we have to clarify what it is that we mean by the term evidentialism, because there's kind of two types of evidentialism kind of known, and so we want to define exactly what's being discussed here. So evidentialism in evangelical Christian apologetics should be carefully distinguished from epistemological evidentialism, how we know things, which adheres to W.K. Clifford's dictum that it is wrong everywhere, always, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. Which might sound good, but it's a little bit different of what we're talking about. Here, Clifford's maxim has rightly been questioned for a variety of perspectives. For one thing, the statement itself is not one on which we can even imagine what would constitute sufficient evidence. What would count for or against evidence for the maximum? And that's where we kind of run into problems with the other side of the argumentation for Christianity as well is, well, that's just not good evidence. Well, okay, can you clarify what you mean by good evidence? Nope, you've just got to be able to convince me. Okay, yeah. Convince you, but it's convinced me. So, is the standard you, or is the standard some objective person, if that's possible? What is it that we mean by sufficient evidence? And right. So we have that issue here.
Yeah, and so that's one of the issues that they point out. I think we can slightly modify this particular criticism as well. So it's not, what do you mean by sufficient evidence? That's an extremely important issue here with regard to criticism of Clifford. But notice they say, what would count for against evidence for his maxim?
Right.
That it's wrong everywhere, always. So what's the evidence for that, right? So what's the sufficient evidence for that? So that's kind of like a two-pronged, criticism there. Exactly. Another one they give us is it establishes what we might call an epistemological idea of suspicion. Right. In other words, the belief that we should consider all beliefs false unless proven true by sufficient evidence. But of course, we can ask the question, as they do, why should the burden of proof be placed on a belief rather than on its denial? And so here's the illustration they give us. They say, if I believe that the world exists as a reality independent of my senses, I'm perfectly right to adhere to this belief in the absence of reason or evidence to the contrary, right? And so why should we place the burden of proof on the belief instead of its denial? And Clifford really doesn't tell us that, right? So, yeah, those are so they're going to reject that kind of evidentialism, the Cliffordian, we might say, evidentialism.
Exactly. Well, apologetic evidentialism does not assume epistemological evidentialism, and most, if not all, evidentialist apologists would reject Clifford's maximum. If we were to formulate a maximum of evidentialist apologetics, it would be something like this. It is wrong everywhere, always, and for anyone to tell someone else to believe something other than on the basis of evidence. So that's what they're talking about. So it is wrong to tell someone else to believe something other than on the basis of evidence. So evidence is being the key there. So in other words, evidentialism in apologetics places a certain burden of proof on the apologist to show non-Christians why it is rational to believe in Christ.
Yeah. Okay. So, and they call this apologetical evidentialism, right? As opposed to epistemological evidentialism that Clifford has. So they make this distinction here to help us to understand what's going on.